All right, today, I used to have a basketball. Where'd it go? Where's my, oh, I'll be right back. All right, so, today, cold coffee. Today I wanna talk to you about how to write poetry. And before anything, poetry is very subjective. Very, very subjective. So what I wanna do is kind of go through just maybe, I'm really bad at like keeping count of how many steps I give people through the video. So I'm gonna say 8 steps, maybe 7 steps. I don't know. I'm gonna give you some steps on how to write poetry. I don't wanna say how to write poetry. Maybe I want to say how I write poetry or options for poetry, because again, poetry is very subjective. Very. I don't think there's a way to do it. I really, really don't. So for me, the first thing I like to do is develop an idea. And when you develop an idea, especially with poetry, it can be absolutely anything, right? Absolutely anything. I could write about this ball. I could write about this bracelet. I could write about my fidget tool. I could write about my coffee. World issues. I could write about plants. I could write about my mom, my dad, aunt, uncle, friend, anything. It can be serious, it can be silly, it can be angry, whatever you want. But you need to try and develop some sort of idea to get started. Once you're finished, I like to do something called a flash draft. And that is kind of taking that idea and trying to stretch it out. So for example, maybe I'm writing about basketball and I'm just writing a very quick 1 minute, 30 seconds flash draft about basketball, right? So it's a paragraph. Doesn't really look like poetry yet, but I'm just writing in sentences, not worrying about the spelling, not worrying about capitalization, not worrying about punctuation. I'm just writing very, very quickly about that specific idea. Then, and your flash draft can look very different. If you don't want to write in like paragraph or sentences, you could do it in point form. You could do a story web. You could do a story mountain. It's entirely up to you. But you want to take that idea and you want to stretch it out a little bit. So you have an idea, I'm saying idea a lot, of what you're going to write about. All right, so next you can kind of start to figure out like what your style is. And I don't really have, when I do picture books, when I write poetry, I like to figure out my own style. So I'm saying you don't need to do a style that you see online or like a classic style like a Sonic or a Haiku, etc. You can figure out your own style. But the structure of your poem is extremely important, very, very important. So you need to decide what that looks like at some point. Next, I like to read mentor text. So if you're doing something about basketball, Google basketball poems, you'll find something. If you're redoing something about your mom, you could probably just, Google poems about mom. You can Google anything. Or if you have a book around, you can do that as well. But reading a poem or a number of different poems, and it doesn't have to necessarily be around your topic, will give you inspiration for what your poetry or poem could look like. Now, once you're done that, you want to try and figure out the full draft. So now you're like starting to get into it. So now you're really trying to figure out what your structure is. It's becoming a little bit more developed, and you also want to start listening to the beat of your poem. So when I say that, you want to read your poem kind of like a song. That's what I like to think about it as, and listen to the words, and is it flowing? Last thing, poetry does not have to rhyme. I don't know where this comes from, but oftentimes when kids come in the classroom, they think poetry and they think everything has to rhyme. It does not have to rhyme. And mind you, when I write poetry, often none of my words rhyme, to be honest. Trying to think about it. Yeah, not very many of them rhyme. That's really important. Next, you want to reflect. And I think reflecting is so important just in general, in life. It makes things a little bit easier and helps you understand a little bit more. But reflect and read it out loud to a friend. Ask someone like, what do they think about your poem? Try and get some honest feedback. Lastly, you want to revise. Now, revising is one of my favorite, also oftentimes frustrating times, because you really get to weed out what's not good and figure out what is awesome, whether it's word choice, onomatopoeia, whether it's dialogue, whether it's action. You can really start to take care of each word individually, right? Use a thesaurus if you have to. Look for synonyms. All those things will help you develop the right word for the right scene or for the right moment inside of your poetry. I think this is where you really can develop your craft a little bit more and play with the words, right? Play with them, juggle them, move them around, move some of the sentences around, move the structure around a little bit, but revise. And lastly, don't worry about what other people think. That's it, I'm out, later, peace.